German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says his country will reach NATO's 2% defence budget and has called on China not to supply weapons to Russia.
The US and Russia trade barbs at the G20. Their top diplomats meet, but the summit ends with no consensus on the war in Ukraine. Inflation in the Eurozone fell by less than expected in February. If you exclude the likes of food and energy, it actually rose.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has reiterated his support for Ukraine before the Bundestag and announced that he will increase the German defence budget to at least 2% of GDP to meet the target agreed with NATO. Scholz referred to the special fund of €100 billion created after the Russian invasion of Ukraine and called on China not to provide arms to Russia.
Meine Botschaft an Peking ist klar. Nutzen Sie Ihren Einfluss in Moskau, auf den Rückzug russischer Truppen zu drängen, und liefern Sie keine Waffen an den Aggressor Russland. Bleibt die Frage, ist Putin überhaupt bereit, über die Rückkehr zu diesen Grundsätzen und einen gerechten Frieden zu verhandeln? Im Moment spricht nichts dafür.
Scholz travels to Washington on Thursday for talks with US President Joe Biden. He said that, quote, every decision ensures that NATO does not become belligerent.
A rare moment of unity at the G20, a minute's silence in honour of the earthquake victims in Syria and Turkey. Otherwise, there was little to disguise the divide over Russia's war in Ukraine, which dominated proceedings. The US called it unprovoked and unjustified. Russia accused the West of blackmail and threats. China and Russia, whose foreign ministers met, refused to support the call for Russian forces to get out of Ukraine. The two countries were the only G20 members not to endorse the statement, demanding their complete and unconditional withdrawal. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, here meeting his Brazilian counterpart, did briefly meet Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov for around 10 minutes. Both men reportedly repeated their country's positions. The host's India said the differences could not be reconciled.
The experience of the last few years, financial crisis, climate change, pandemic, terrorism, and wars clearly shows that global governance has failed.
Narendra Modi called for unity to face the planet's many challenges. The Indian leader wanted to devote the summit to issues such as the development of the poorest countries or climate change. But as expected, Russia's war in Ukraine cast a long shadow.
Ukrainian forces are hanging on to their positions in the almost entirely ruined eastern city of Bakhmut under constant attack from Russian troops seeking to claim their first major victory in more than half a year. Russian forces conducted ground attacks around Bakhmut on the 1st of March. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that Russian troops continue to advance in the Bakhmut direction and attacked the city of Bakhmut itself. Geolocated footage confirms that Russian forces made advances on the southern outskirts of Bakhmut. Russian mill bloggers claim that Wagner Group fighters have consolidated control of the outskirts of Yagidne, about 1 kilometer northwest of Bakhmut, and are moving southwest towards Hromove, though Ukrainian forces retain access to the Hromove-Bakhmut route. Now, while some Russian sources claim that the situation in Bakhmut is worsening for Ukrainian troops, Wagner Group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin claimed that Ukraine is transferring large numbers of reserves to this area. Ukrainian officials continue to emphasize that Ukrainian troops have the option to conduct a controlled withdrawal from Bakhmut if they see fit. The UK Defence Ministry points at the weather that might be on the Ukrainian side, saying as Ukrainian forces continue their defense of Bakhmut, rising temperatures are now creating the muddy conditions, limiting cross-country movement. This typically provides some military advantage to the defending forces. Now, it is almost certain that by late March, cross-country movement will be at its worst following the final thaw. This will add further friction to ground operations and hamper the off-road movement of heavier armoured vehicles.
Large queues outside Larissa's General Hospital following Tuesday's deadly train crash in Greece. While some came to identify their loved ones via DNA samples, others came to donate blood. Euronews went to Larissa Central Square, a few kilometres away from the site where at least 57 people were killed and 72 injured.
Μπορεί οι δυσκολίες να είναι πολλές και μεγάλες, αλλά πάντα υπάρχει το συναίσθημα, η αγάπη για τον συνάνθρωπο και πάντα είτε μικρός είτε μεγάλος, όπως βλέπετε και πολλά νέα παιδιά είναι εδώ και περιμένουν υπομονετικά, θα βοηθήσουν για τους συνανθρώπους τους.
The Greek Red Cross said it is ready to assist in this multi-layered effort. Their volunteers were relieved to announce a total of 270 blood units donated in the first day.
Δυστυχώς βρισκόμαστε σε μια κατάσταση δύσκολη, μια κατάσταση στενάχωρη, μας γεμίζει θλίψη, όμως θα πρέπει να δούμε και το όμορφο κομμάτι της ανθρωπιάς, της αλληλεγγύης, που ο κόσμος έρχεται και δίνει το αίμα του, προσφέρει αυτό που έχει για τους συνανθρώπους μας.
Blood donations are crucial. Greece's National Blood Donating Centre has urged everyone to assist. It noted that available centres are pinpointed on an interactive map on their website.
Η προσπάθεια συνεχίζεται και οι πολίτες ανταποκρίνονται. Ευχή όλων είναι η αλληλεγγύη να μην γίνεται πράξη μόνο κάτω από τραγικές συνθήκες.
Meanwhile, rescue and retrieval operations at the crash site have been on the go since early Thursday morning. Rescuers' efforts are focusing on the third carriage, which was the train's main restaurant.
Είμαστε ουσιαστικά στο σημείο που το βαγόνι που υπάρχει αυτή τη στιγμή πίσω μου, με τη βοήθεια των γερανών, θα πρέπει να ανασηκωθεί ώστε να δούμε τι μπορεί να υπάρχει κάτω από αυτό, από σωρούς, αλλά και μέσα σε αυτό.
Many of the injured were taken to Larissa Hospital, and in Thessaloniki, those who are not in critical condition are expected to be released very soon. Meanwhile, emergency workers are still trying to locate 10 missing people.
French President Emmanuel Macron received an enthusiastic welcome in Libreville at the start of a 4-day visit to Africa. Along with Gabon, he will visit Angola, Congo-Brazzaville and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Macron is on a diplomatic drive to test a new, responsible relationship with the continent as anti-French sentiment runs high in some former colonies. Paris is concerned over Russia and China's rising influence in French-speaking African countries.
La riforma delle pensioni voluta dal presidente francese Emmanuel Macron ha portato in piazza milioni di persone da gennaio. Cosa significa questa riforma per la Francia, ma cosa significa per l'Europa? Ne parliamo su Euronews Witness.
It's been more than 10 years since trade unions in France united against the government. President Macron's proposed pension reform wants to raise the minimum retirement age from 62 to 64, with 43 years of contributions. The union's call to strike is seeing a massive response from the public.
C'est très dur, surtout à mon âge. Parce qu'en principe, à mon âge, on ne devrait pas faire de la livraison. C'est pénible pour le dos, c'est stressant, c'est fatigant, ça joue sur le moral.
Some European countries have higher retirement ages and don't fully understand why the French are so angry.
Un Suédois ou un Allemand, on va dire, mais ils ne travaillent jamais, ils sont 35 heures, ils sont tout le temps en vacances. Et en fait, c'est cette densification du travail. C'est-à-dire qu'il y a certes moins d'années travaillées, moins de gens en emploi, et du coup, ceux qui travaillent, ils travaillent plus dur.
France has one of the highest productivity levels in Europe. Workers are producing more in less time, but this comes at a cost.
Souvent, les aides-soignantes, elles sont en arrêt, longue maladie, invalidité. Je ne sais pas si le gouvernement va être gagnant à nous prolonger de 2 ans l'âge de départ à la retraite pour les soignants.
Sharp price rises for food, along with services and goods, meant that headline inflation in the Eurozone fell by less than forecast in February. Core inflation, which excludes energy and food prices and is seen as a more accurate marker, climbed in February to 5.6%. Eurostat data confirmed that headline inflation dipped only marginally, prices rising by 8.5% over the previous year. Food, alcohol and tobacco prices jumped the most, hitting 15% annually. Experts believe there's little room for improvement. According to Oxford Economics, food shows no signs of relief. Also of concern is the upward pressure on non-energy industrial goods and services. It's all raised fears that with inflation stubbornly high, the pressure on wages and interest rates will increase too. The signs are that the European Central Bank will not only add 50 basis points to the deposit rate in March, but will continue along the same path in the second quarter of the year.
Carbon emissions hit a record high in 2022, according to the International Energy Agency, rising by 0.9% compared to the previous year. Countries switching to coal from gas to generate electricity was a principal cause for the increase. That happened after Russia's invasion of Ukraine pushed oil and gas prices higher. The agency says a rebound in air travel following the easing of pandemic restrictions was also a factor. However, despite the record, the rise was lower than expected.